But given the atrocities, the grotesque atrocities committed by Hamas when they invaded Israel nearly 2 weeks or so ago, you know, I keep saying this because, oh, you can't talk like this. I mean, Israel, it's incumbent upon Israel to avenge what happened to its 1,400 butchered citizens. You know, babies were beheaded, women were raped, kids were cut down in a hail of bullets, people executed on their doorsteps. You know, the horrors have been revealed in all these videos and pictures that some journalists and politicians have seen, and they've walked away weeping. These people committed terrible atrocities against innocent people, and I'm afraid that part of the equation here is a self-respecting sovereign state like Israel does have to take revenge. It cannot just let that stand and sort of, you know, play the long game and say, OK, let's have a ceasefire. Would we in Britain put up with that? I don't think so.
Yeah, but it's the other part to that. I get that, because what has happened to Israeli citizens here, it was an appalling atrocity. You know, it deserves all the condemnation. But what we cannot get to is a point where the escalation gets to a stage where thousands of innocent civilians in Gaza lose their lives as well. And that is not fundamentally going to solve the problem here. You know, escalation never does. History has taught us that. And that's not me being some idealist here and being naive. That's just a fact of conflict. There has to be a point, at some point, where there is a pathway to peace negotiations.
But you would accept, James, you would accept, as Netanyahu keeps saying. I mean, their campaign hasn't even begun yet. They haven't even gone in. So escalation, this isn't escalation, this is the beginning. It's going to get much, much worse. The Israelis haven't started yet. They're in no mood for a ceasefire.
I agree, but I am uncomfortable with that, because it's going to make the conflict much worse on many different levels and cause significant amounts of civilian loss of life. At some point, the bombs do have to stop and the peace negotiations do have to begin. Now, it can be done in different places. I know people would say this is false equivalence, but it is still relevant. Look at the peace process in Northern Ireland, for instance. Part of that peace process was to defund and de-weaponize over time the IRA. And it got to a point where two very opposing sides, in terms of toxic components within that and terrorism, got round the table on a pathway to peace. These things are not easy, but at some point there has to be a pathway to peace and a compromise solution that all sides can actually accept, because the alternative to that is endless conflict, more losses of civilian lives, and escalation, which will cause potentially the likes of Iran to come into the conflict, and that will make matters a hell of a lot worse.
It certainly will, but the other factor to consider, of course, is that the entire international community, whilst cautioning Israel, also entirely, quite rightly in my view, backs Israel's mission to annihilate, eradicate and destroy that bunch of thugs, Hamas. So it's a very difficult situation. Good to talk to you about it, though, James, and we will no doubt discuss this again in the not-too-distant future.